Chapter 51 Avengers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. For nearly a month, Sasuke did not appear in the class. Just when all the girls had given up hope, Sasuke suddenly appeared in the class again. This made the girls ecstatic, and one by one they surrounded Sasuke and told him about their worries. These girls are really crazy, and girls are really scary. Shikamaru said with sweat on his forehead as he lay on the table and looked at the situation over there. Indeed. Xia Li also nodded in agreement, and then said, but Sasuke has experienced this kind of thing, and he can still endure such harassment. He is also pitiful and strong. Shikamaru was stunned for a moment, and then thought about it. When he put himself in Sasuke's role, even if he rested for a month, the bad news of the family's demise would definitely not be so easy to get over, so Sasuke is definitely not calm now. Even in the face of so many girls harassing him, he just clenched his hands in front of him and didn't lose his mind and explode. It was really rare. Even if he encountered the same thing, he was not sure whether he would directly ask everyone to leave. If he didn't leave, it would be normal to curse, Shikamaru was thinking, and at the same time, he was reviewing his own thoughts, finding loopholes in his thinking, and making up for the shortcomings, hoping to think about things from a more comprehensive perspective in the future. Bang! However, Shikamaru's thoughts were interrupted by a loud noise. He looked over and saw that it happened on Sasuke's side, Shikamaru's side, and he really couldn't help it in the end. Xia Li's eyes couldn't help but leave the scroll after the sound, and looked at Sasuke, who had just slapped his hands on the table and stood up. Like Shikamaru's thoughts, Xia Li also thought that Sasuke couldn't stand it. Then, Xia Li saw, after Sasuke slapped his hands on the table, the girls next to him were also startled. After seeing Sasuke leave his position, they didn't dare to block him and made way. However, this road did not lead to the door of the classroom, but to the back row of the classroom. Xia Li found that Sasuke seemed to be coming towards him. This discovery made him a little confused. Why did he come towards him? Soon, Sasuke walked in front of Xia Li and stared at Xia Li. In the same dark eyes, Xia Li was puzzled, as if asking Sasuke what he was going to do, while Sasuke's eyes were full of desire for destruction. This scene also made the people around nervous. It seemed as if they were going to fight. Moreover, the two protagonists were very popular in the class. They would not be happy if anyone was hurt. Is there anything wrong? Sasuke classmate. Xia Li was a little curious about why Sasuke was looking for him at this time. Come out with me. Sasuke whispered, then turned and walked out of the classroom. Xia Li almost said, why I went out with you. After thinking about it, he was really curious about why Sasuke came to school to find him on the first day after the extermination of his clan, so he stood up and followed behind. When passing by Ino's position on the way, he saw the other party's worried eyes. Xia Li smiled at her to reassure her that nothing would happen. Soon, Sasuke took Xia Li to a slightly remote place and stopped. So, Sasuke, what do you want to talk to me about? Xia Li asked again. Fight with me, I will definitely defeat you. Sasuke turned around and stared at Xia Li. He must take revenge. Every night these days, he would have nightmares about what happened that night. Revenge, I want revenge. I must take revenge. But how can I, such a weak person, take revenge? He is not even the first in the class now. So, Sasuke set his sights on Xia Li. If he wants revenge, he must first defeat the first in front of him. If he can't even defeat the other party, how can he have the strength to take revenge? Xia Li was stunned, and was also wondering why the other party suddenly said that he wanted to defeat him. Although he said before that it was in the exam, why is he attacking him directly now? Then Xia Li thought of the other party's current state. He probably thought about revenge, and he was the first in the class. Maybe Xia Li understood it a little. Thinking about it this way, Sasuke regarded him as the first step to revenge. It's possible, but not now. Xia Li said after thinking about it. He also wanted to see what Sasuke's current level was. Why? Sasuke still stared at Xia Li closely. I can't show my strength now, so let's meet here after school. How about we have a fight then? Xia Li thought about it and said, Xia Li is currently in the state of shadow clone, and in order to use more chakra for training, the chakra extracted every time when using the shadow clone is just for learning. As long as Xia Li dares to fight Sasuke here, he will passively dissolve the shadow clone on the spot soon, so, the battle must not be carried out now. Okay. Although he didn't understand, Sasuke still agreed. To defeat, he naturally had to defeat the strongest state of the first place. What's the point of taking advantage of others' misfortune? After school, Xia Li asked Ino to go back first. He had something to do. Although Ino was a little disappointed, he still agreed. Then Xia Li came to the place where he agreed with Sasuke. Is it okay now? Sasuke stared at Xia Li and asked. Xia Li nodded and looked at Sasuke with a sigh. When the shadow clone passed the message to him, he also felt that Sasuke was actually quite good. In this situation, he was able to control himself and agree to postpone instead of attacking directly. It would be difficult for others to do so in such a situation. So, Indra and Ashura, Sasuke's eyes lit up, and then he took the initiative to attack. After a while, Sasuke's forehead was full of sweat, and his eyes were full of disbelief, because all his attacks were lightly blocked by Xia Li with his hands, and Xia Li didn't even attack much, otherwise he should have been defeated. Xia Li looked at Sasuke with interest. Although he was one of the two hanging walls, he could still be bullied at this stage. Why not bully him more while he can? Thinking about it, Xia Li saw Sasuke gritting his teeth and reaching into the ninja tool bag, and his face suddenly changed. You have to know that they are only in the first grade, and they haven't even been taught to fight, let alone fight with ninja tools. Although he can't be afraid of these, Sasuke took the lead in using ninja tools in this battle where ninja tools should not be used, and Iruka didn't watch. This means that if it were someone else, they would really be hurt by Sasuke if they were not careful. If they were less lucky. In short, from this moment on, the nature of this battle has changed. As for Sasuke, he absolutely did not want to admit that the gap between him and Xia Li would be so big. He didn't care so much. He just wanted to win the final victory. His hand had already touched the shuriken. Chapter 52 Lessons. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. 3 shurikens were shot from different directions towards Xia Li's position. The shurikens used by Sasuke were not fast, but he was worthy of being the descendant of Uchiha. His throwing shurikens were still very exquisite even now. However, Xia Li, who had seen Sasuke's movements, had already quickly made 3 seals. Win. When the shuriken hit Xia Li, Sasuke suddenly realized that something was wrong. The opponent was not Itachi. Even if he wanted revenge, he should not hurt Xia Li. Did he vent his anger on an irrelevant person? Sasuke opened his eyes wide. Before he could continue to lose consciousness, Xia Li's figure dispersed and turned into a piece of wood that fell to the ground. There were several marks of shuriken on the wood. What? Sasuke's pupils suddenly shrank. It turned out to be a substitute technique. Why did the other party know this? Didn't he teach it yet? Even though he only focused on physical training in the first half of the semester, he only learned to throw shuriken at home. Even the ninjutsu he knew was the fire escape that his father gave him at the end of the semester, and because he didn't get the first place, his father gave him to catch up with Xia Li. Where? Sasuke quickly observed his surroundings, but it was too late. He felt his wrist being held by a hand like an iron clamp, and the mere holding made his wrist feel severe pain, not to mention resistance. The next moment, he only felt dizzy, and after a burst of pain, he found that his hands had been forced behind his back and pressed by Xia Li's hand, and Sasuke was pressed to the ground by Xia Li. Tisk, it's just an ordinary fight, why do you use shuriken? Xia Li said, knocking Sasuke's head with the joint of his index finger. Let me go, I haven't lost yet. Sasuke roared in a low voice. You haven't lost yet? Xia Li didn't hesitate, and continued to knock twice, and continued to see that the other party was still resisting. Finally, after using all his strength, Sasuke still couldn't move even a little bit from Xia Li's grip, and slowly realized in despair that he had probably really lost. As soon as the anger dissipated, Sasuke immediately felt a pain in his head. How many times did this bastard hit him? Let me go, I admit defeat. Sasuke said with gritted teeth. Oh, you admit defeat, then tell me why ordinary battles use shuriken. Xia Li said and hit him again, as if he was used to it. Don't hit me again. Sasuke felt another wave of pain. Then tell me quickly. Xia Li was in a bad mood now. He just came here to play out of curiosity, but was attacked by a classmate with shuriken. Moreover, if he hadn't avoided the 3 shurikens just now, he would definitely be seriously injured. Didn't you dodge it easily? After a pause, Sasuke also realized that he really shouldn't have taken out the shuriken in this battle, but he still said it stubbornly. I dodged it, but can others dodge it? What if they are killed by the shuriken you threw? Xia Li said and knocked again. Others can't force me to use shuriken. Sasuke said hard. It seems so, but this is not the answer I want. Xia Li thought about it and nodded. It was true for Sasuke, but he knocked again. I will kill you. Sasuke was a little confused. Didn't he agree with his point of view? After being knocked again, he was furious again. This is not it either. Xia Li ignored Sasuke's anger and said expressionlessly. He was also very annoyed at this time, for a long time. Sorry. The voice is too soft, I can't hear it. Xia Li didn't knock again this time, but still said. Sorry, I shouldn't use shuriken suddenly. Sasuke said loudly as if he had given up on himself. Forget it this time, but next time, it won't be that simple. Xia Li finally let go of Sasuke. He was really dissatisfied. Although it was normal for ninjas to use shuriken in battle, they were not ninjas, and they were only in the 1st grade. Also, next time in such an ordinary battle between classmates, if there is no teacher watching and allowing the use of shuriken, don't use shuriken. Xia Li said as he walked towards the training ground. For him, Sasuke now was not even considered exercise. Xia Li, why are you so strong? Suddenly, Sasuke's voice reached Xia Li's ears. Because I work harder than you. Xia Li replied, and his talent must be no less than the other party's harder work. How could he catch up with him before Sasuke's cheat was turned on? In fact, Xia Li also wanted to say Deep Blue, at some points at this time. If he could take a shortcut, he would not want to be so tired, but unfortunately he didn't. Work hard. Sasuke lay on the ground with his eyes blank. Fortunately, Xia Li did not hit the back of his head, otherwise this posture would definitely hurt a lot. Xia Li said that it was a good thing that Sasuke kept trying to raise his head, so he was able to hit him in the front. Otherwise, if he hit him in the back, he was really afraid that Sasuke would get hurt. Xia Li, my shuriken is not meant to kill people. Suddenly, Sasuke spoke, then realized that this seemed like a sign of weakness, and immediately closed his mouth and muttered, believe it or not. Xia Li paused and looked at the wooden stake of the substitute technique. There were indeed only some scratches. If it was a real person, there would only be a few less fatal wounds on his body. However, he remembered that the 3 shurikens were directed in his direction. Xia Li suddenly realized something. The Uchiha shuriken throwing technique was indeed well-deserved. At this time, Xia Li's expression finally eased a lot. Although he still shouldn't take out the shuriken, he didn't completely lose his mind and took into account the other party's life and death. This was not bad, even for an Avenger, it was already very good and understandable, but unfortunately, that was the perspective of a bystander. Xia Li was an eyewitness. It was a good thing. Even if he didn't completely lose his mind, it would definitely be worth a lesson. Xia Li left this place, leaving Sasuke alone. At this time, Sasuke slowly sat up, touching the place where he was hit, gritting his teeth, even touching it could feel very painful, and it must have a big bulge. Suddenly, when Sasuke touched his forehead, he paused. There was a place where someone often hit him. Although it was definitely not as hard as Xia Li, it reminded Sasuke of that person again. Itachi. Sasuke suppressed his anger and roared, and then finally calmed down again after a long time. He continued to rub the bulging bag and walk towards the home where no one was waiting for him. His figure was a little lonely and depressed. A masked man had been watching this scene in secret. He didn't know whether to stop it. After all, his duty was to watch Sasuke, but Xia Li was also the person that the third generation said he would focus on before, so he didn't move, and now he was relieved. If any of the two got into trouble, he would not be able to escape being held accountable. However, Sasuke's skills are not bad. That Xia Li should be able to become a genin, right? That substitute technique is more proficient than him. It really deserves to be a person valued by the third generation. As for the matter between Sasuke and Xia Li, it is better to report it to the third generation to deal with it. Chapter 53 Strange Achievements and Determination, 46K. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. Chapter 53 Strange Achievements and Determination, 4.6K. Oh, did Sasuke take the initiative to find Xia Li? And got beaten up? The third generation couldn't help but smile when he saw the news. It was not surprising that Sasuke couldn't beat Xia Li at this time. If Xia Li was thrown to the 6th grade, it would be difficult to find an opponent. The difference in physique was made up for or even surpassed by lightning release. Ninjutsu and taijutsu were beyond the level of genin. The only thing lacking was the amount of chakra, but at Xia Li's age, the amount of chakra could not be rushed. Therefore, every time he saw Xia Li's attributes in various aspects, even the third generation felt that it was so perfect. Even in his memory, only the 4th generation and Kakashi could compare with Xia Li. After seeing the reason why Xia Li beat Sasuke, the third generation nodded. From his point of view, he deserved to be beaten. Why would the first-year students use shuriken without the teacher watching? And it seems that Sasuke did not hate Xia Li after being beaten up, which is quite important. It seems to be slightly different from other Uchiha, the third generation thought, so, it might not be a bad thing to let them contact each other like this, and there might be unexpected effects. Thinking of this, the third generation also smiled. By the way, there is also the matter of Xia Li and the little girl of the Yamanaka clan. The third generation looked at the news on another scroll. As the object of his special attention, Xia Li's actions are naturally all within his sight. After all, the special kunai cannot be lost, and the observation during this period of time made the third generation more assured about Xia Li. The other party's character is definitely not bad, and most importantly, the most important person to him is in Konoha. The third generation has already collected information about Sinai. Over the years, because he is a classmate of Akimichi, he has been secretly taken care of, and he has no dissatisfaction with the village, and this is enough. If Sinai is there, from the third generation's point of view, Xia Li will never betray Konoha, not to mention that the other party is still with the little girl from the Yamanaka clan. Yamanaka, that's not bad. The third generation put down the scroll about Xia Li with satisfaction, and he could basically rest assured about Xia Li. As the Hokage, what is there for him to distrust about the 3 major families of Ino, Shika and Cho? Then, the third generation stood in front of the window with his hands behind his back, looking at the direction of the Uchiha clan. His eyes were a little complicated. He was still a little dazed until now. Did the Uchiha really get wiped out by him? Now there is only Sasuke, the only Uchiha left in the village. And the most important thing is that the third generation's previous preparations were not used much, which made him a little unbelievable. Can Itachi and Gen really kill all the Uchiha directly? What changes are there that he doesn't know about? The third generation took a deep puff of tobacco, then exhaled, and his whole face was looming under the cover of smoke. Bang! At this time, the door was opened again, and the one who walked in was the bandaged Danzo. Hiruzen. Danzo didn't have time to say what he meant. However, the third generation did not even turn his head, and said directly, I have said many times that Sasuke will never be handed over to you. I promised Itachi. That is just a traitor. Don't be so stupid, Hiruzen. He is the only Uchiha left in Konoha. It is the most correct choice to hand him over to the root for protection. Danzo stared at the third generation. No need to say more. The third generation's tone was very firm. Although he didn't know why Itachi could directly destroy all the Uchiha, he was still very afraid of this power. If the other party saw that he did not abide by the agreement and handed Sasuke to the root, would Itachi attack Konoha? On the other hand, if he took good care of Sasuke, then the Itachi card might still be used. Even if it can't be used, it should not have any dangerous thoughts about Konoha who took good care of Sasuke, so, the third generation would never hand Sasuke over to Danzo. Then that's Xia Li. Enough. Danzo hadn't finished speaking, and the third generation interrupted directly, with a little anger in his tone. Danzo naturally understood that today's trip had failed again. He had come here many times, but was rejected directly every time. This made him clench his fists and growl. Hiruzen, you will definitely regret it, that the third generation slowly turned around, and under the hat representing the Hokage, a pair of old but still sharp eyes stared at Danzo, and calmly stated a fact. I am the Hokage, Danzo. Humph. Danzo's face was dark, and he snorted coldly before slamming the door and leaving. By the way, withdraw the roots that are monitoring Sasuke, and don't let me do it. After Danzo came out, the third generation's light voice came from behind, making his face darker, and he really wanted to slam the door again. Is this a case of only the state officials being allowed to set fires, but not the people being allowed to light lamps? Aren't you doing it yourself? Xia Li was reading a book quietly here. He actually knew that he was mostly watched by the Umbu when he was outside during the day. After all, his perception became stronger and stronger in the state of emptiness, and even the Umbu, who were good at hiding, could not hide from Xia Li at this time. However, even if the Umbu was discovered, Xia Li did not feel anything wrong. Since you have shown your talent, you must bear the corresponding trouble, and this Umbu actually appeared after he received the Flying Thunder God's kunai. It was probably because they were worried that he would lose the kunai. In fact, it didn't matter if it was damaged, but it would be troublesome if it was obtained by other villages and studied. As for Xia Li, although he didn't like being watched, it didn't matter. He didn't do anything shameful. From a positive perspective, the existence of the Umbu could even be regarded as a layer of protection. At this time, Sasuke came to him again. What's the matter? Something happened again? Xia Li's tone was still a little bad. I hope it can continue today. Sasuke stared at Xia Li and said. He had to improve as soon as possible. And looking around, only fighting with Xia Li could quickly improve his level. Others were far behind. I don't want to spar with someone who doesn't follow the rules, and it's actually not a sparring. Xia Li said the facts calmly. That was his unilateral abuse of Sasuke. I won't use the shuriken again this time. I was wrong about what happened yesterday. Sasuke clenched his fists, his knuckles turned white, but he still said, although his voice was very low at the end, but getting the proud Uchiha to apologize on his own initiative is indeed an achievement. Although Xia Li thinks that this is only Sasuke, and other Uchiha will probably never apologize even if they are beaten to death. Xia Li thought about it and felt that his relationship with Sasuke should not be too stiff. After all, the other party is one of his confidants. What if the other party has a bad impression of him and then plots against him? Thinking of this, Xia Li looked at the obvious bulge on Sasuke's head and suddenly wanted to laugh. That was his masterpiece. To be honest, he hit the joint of his index finger a little painful yesterday. Once a week, I don't have that much time to waste on you. Xia Li thought about it and said, anyway, he is no longer the same as he used to be. Even if he contacts Naruto and Sasuke at the same time, there will be no problem. Maybe the third generation still hopes that he will contact him more to cultivate mutual ties. The old man really values this. Then it's settled. I will wait for you at the same place on this day next week. Sasuke's eyes lit up and said so. Xia Li nodded and thought about it. He was also beating Naruto, and now he was going to beat Sasuke. This was a strange achievement. It seems that you beat him up yesterday. Shikamaru said after Sasuke left. Eavesdropping is not good. Xia Li responded. You guys were talking without hiding from others. I was sitting next to you, so I must have heard it. Shikamaru complained. Well, it can be considered a beating. Did you see the big bump on Sasuke's head? I hit him. Xia Li thought about it and said. Suddenly, Shikamaru was silent, and then he couldn't help looking at Sasuke in front of him. Even from here, he could clearly see the big bump on the other's head. He couldn't help but swear, and then said. You are cruel. It's okay. Who told him to use the shuriken first? Xia Li said casually, and then he didn't say anything more. Shikamaru also curled his lips, looked at Xia Li's unscathed appearance, and guessed that the gap in this competition was probably quite large. Even in this situation, he still came to ask for a beating. Shikamaru looked at Sasuke, and the other party was serious about revenge. During the break, Xia Li also told Ino about this. Ino was a little confused. Her time was not taken by those girls, but by another man. Who can she reason with? Well, can I watch from the side? Ino was still unwilling to give up. Even if it was just for one day, she was still unwilling to lose like this. Xia Li looked at Ino and knew what Ino was thinking. The village has been stable recently. He was thinking about whether to stop. Now it seems that Ino is not willing to do it for even one day. What will happen if he says that he will stop permanently later? With Ino's personality, he should agree, but it is inevitable to be sad, so forget it, just continue. Anyway, it won't take much time. Xia Li also found that although he still couldn't say he loved her, and he would go to jail for refining copper, he had already regarded her as an important person, and he never wanted to see his important people sad. Okay. Xia Li nodded in Ino's expectant eyes. Great. Ino hugged Xia Li's arm and smiled like a flower. Unfortunately, it was a daisy. Xia Li looked at Ino and kept shouting guilt in his heart. He couldn't help but sigh. When will he grow up? If he grows up a little more, the guilt in his heart will not be so strong. Xia Li, you should have fought with Sasuke yesterday, right? Did you win? Ino asked curiously. Of course I won. Look at the bump on his head. I knocked him. Xia Li raised his eyebrows and said with a smile. Oh, that's good. Ino looked at the bump on Sasuke's head. It didn't matter to her that Xia Li didn't lose. Sasuke was knocked. By the way, this is for you. I've already used it. Xia Li handed the kunai he had borrowed before to Ino. Oh, it's this kunai. I almost forgot about it. Ino thought about it and took it. After all, this was her father's weapon, not hers, but Ino still said. Does Xia Li want it? If Xia Li wants it, I'll ask my dad to give it to you. I've seen that he has a few more, which won't affect his use. Well, thank you, but no thanks. Xia Li still said, he didn't want to take things from the other party's house before they really confirmed their relationship, and it was a very precious weapon. In fact, Xia Li also knew that if he really wanted it, Yamanaka Ino should give it to him, or he should not have thought of taking it back after lending it to Xia Li. But in this way, Xia Li always felt that he was looking for Ino to eat soft rice, eating soft rice from a little girl, which was not good. As for Xia Li's learning of the nature of lightning attribute chakra, the first stage was completed before, but because he was still familiar with it, he didn't return it. Now Xia Li is already very good at conducting ordinary kunai. So this kunai made of chakra metal is no longer needed. In the days to come, he only needs to continue to practice with ordinary kunai, and then find some coal. Remember that the conduction ability of this thing itself is relatively poor. If it can succeed again, it can almost be announced that he has succeeded in the nature of lightning attribute conduction. As for the acceleration of the lightning attribute, with the help of the lightning attribute, Xia Li's own speed is indeed getting faster and faster, but if he wants to transfer it from the body to the outside, even if it is just to accelerate the thrown kunai, he has only made some progress. The property change is still a bit difficult. As for the cutting property of the wind attribute, he can already attach the wind attribute chakra to the ordinary kunai, and it also meets the cutting requirements after throwing it out. Going further, he can study the Rasengan shuriken in the property change, but unfortunately the Rasengan Shuriken consumes too much chakra, and his chakra is not enough, he can only continue to deepen it. And when the chakra reaches the day, he will use the Rasengan Shuriken directly like a broken bamboo. It can be said that due to the reference of the original work, the study of the property change of the wind attribute is indeed much faster than that of the lightning attribute. Dad. On this day, Yamanaka Inoichi just returned home and saw his daughter coming to greet him. What's the matter again? Yamanaka Inoichi felt that his daughter would never be so considerate if there was nothing wrong. Well, Dad, I want to learn ninjutsu. I also want to practice our family's ninjutsu and taijutsu. Ino said seriously. Huh? Didn't you want to learn it before? Yamanaka Inoichi was a little confused. Before, he forced Ino to learn a little, so why did she come to him to learn now? Well, because I found Xia Li is really strong, I don't want to be left behind by him. Ino said so. She didn't think much about it before, but now she heard that Xia Li defeated Sasuke, and it seemed that he won easily, and she suddenly woke up. Is that so? But both training and ninjutsu require hard work. Yamanaka Inoichi wanted to see his daughter's determination. I will work hard. Ino waved her little fist and said. Well, let's start now. The tired Yamanaka Inoichi was also in high spirits at this time. His daughter finally wanted to learn, and he was a little moved, although the reason for learning was that the bastard boy made him a little unhappy. At least wanting to learn itself is a good thing, that is, Yamanaka Inoichi showed worry. He knew more or less about Xia Li's situation. Could Ino really keep up with his talent? After all, for now, Ino has fallen behind a lot. Yamanaka Inoichi sighed and hoped that Ino would accept the reality in the future and not be too sad about it. As for now, he should not dampen his daughter's enthusiasm for learning. As time passed, the first grade finally came to an end. Xia Li's life was very monotonous. He spent his time repeatedly in training, studying, accompanying Ino, and beating Naruto and Sasuke. However, his strength was also steadily improving. As for the final results, Xia Li was still stable in the first place, no matter in what aspect, and because of this, Xia Li finally accumulated a set of basic ninja tools, 2 special kunai and a set of shuriken. With a poor family background, he could only rely on grades to get rewards. However, the final results had no impact on Xia Li's life, because his classmates, teachers, and mother were all used to it, and it seemed natural for Xia Li to get first place. Xia Li was a little excited now, because this day was the day he was going to meet the 3rd generation, and it was also the most important day for whether he could obtain Flying Thunder God. Chapter 54, Remarks on the Launch. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. Well, before I knew it, it will be time to put it on the shelves tomorrow. I feel a little sad. The reason I started writing this book is that I was too obsessed with Pokemon and Naruto fan fiction some time ago, so I wanted to write one myself. The tactics of Pokemon were too troublesome to study, so I chose Naruto. That's the reason. Then, there are several questions raised by readers. One of them is being verbose. I personally think that this may not be changed. After all, it has become a habit. I guess this habit was formed when I wrote essays in junior high and high school. Although my essay scores are not high, I write fast, haha. However, words like sighing can be controlled. If readers don't raise it, I will definitely not find it myself. Since I have found it, I will try to control it. Another point is analysis. Well, you can see the reason why I wrote it. I wrote it because of interest, so I have the urge to write down all my thoughts. However, there should be less words in the back than in the front. If there are, I will try to control it. If there are analyses, they will also be related to the protagonist's next actions. For example, when the Uchiha clan was exterminated, you think it was analysis, but I think it was a necessary psychological activity of the protagonist to extinguish his unrealistic thoughts. Although it seems long-winded, it is crucial to the character of the protagonist. To put it bluntly, although he wants to become stronger, he is actually very arrogant and puts his life first. So he will have ideas, but he will not do it if there is a great threat to his life. You said how to survive the 4th war. The protagonist has watched Naruto, and there are 2 wall hangings. If he tries hard, it is no problem to survive, so don't mention things that may endanger his life, such as fusion bloodline. The protagonist will not do it before he is sure. Finally, let's talk about the most discussed point, that is, the goal is to replace Haruno Sakura. I will give my reasons. If you disagree, then you are right. First, the 3-person team is mostly 2 men and 1 woman, not necessary. Whether it is the 3 men who appeared in the original work, or the previous generation of Inoshikacho and Kai's class, this can be shown. I even remember that there was a team of 2 women and 1 man. I also checked when I wrote it, and there is indeed no explicit requirement for 2 men and 1 woman. Second, in terms of talent, did the protagonist know his talent at that time? I don't know, but Sakura Haruno's performance in the early stage was not outstanding, so even if the protagonist's talent was not good, he could still perform better than Sakura Haruno, but if he was really not good, the chance would be much lower. Third, the point I least want to talk about is the bond. When someone said this, I didn't want to answer anything. The protagonist was 6 years old and was in the same class as Naruto and Sasuke. Is it really stipulated that only Sakura Haruno can have a bond with them? No one else can. The above is why I think Sakura Haruno can be replaced. At least if the talent is stronger, the possibility is not low. Finally, it is impossible for me to say that I don't care about the results, but the most important thing is to write what I want to write, so I generally won't change the overall plot. If there are only some short logical inconsistencies or some places that will be misunderstood when reading, I will still change them if I see them. In short, come on, I hope to write better content. There is also automatic subscription, shamelessly mentioning it, but it is not forced. I am a reader here, so I understand everything. I can only say that I will do my best to finish it. Oh, it seems that there is still a problem with updating. For Ka Day, it's not that I don't want to write more, but I don't have time. I need to go to work, and novels are just hobbies, so I don't have that much time to write. In fact, I have evolved from 2,000 a day to 4,000 a day. It is basically very difficult for me to go further. Occasionally 6,000 is possible, but if it is every day, I'm sorry, I can't do it. That's about it. The performance of this book is actually much better than I thought. Now let's see how it is put on the shelves. I hope everyone can continue to support it. Thank you. That's all. An online writer who only wants to write what he wants to write. Kong Fei Yuan. Chapter 55 Jiraiya and the Test. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. The Hokage's office, unlike before, the guard did not block Xia Li's entry this time. It seemed that he had been ordered in advance. The moment Xia Li stepped into the office, a voice reached his ears. What, old man, you called me back more than a dozen times just for this kid. He doesn't look that good. It was a voice full of uncle's feeling, and it sounded that he was not young. Xia Li couldn't help but look at the person who made the voice. When he heard the voice, he had a little guess, but when he really saw it, he couldn't help but open his eyes wide. I saw a tall middle-aged ninja with a forehead protector with the word oil on his head, white messy long hair down to the waist, a red mark under the eyes, and a red coat. There is no doubt that this is one of the 3 ninjas, Jiraiya. Xia Li didn't expect to see Jiraiya here at all, and Xia Li could guess what Jiraiya's appearance here meant. While he was excited, he couldn't help but laugh at himself. Sure enough, the flying thunder god given by the 3rd generation was not so easy to get. Even if his life experience was innocent and he should have shown enough ties with his family and friends, it was probably not enough in the eyes of the 3rd generation. Of course, Xia Li could not give up the possibility of becoming a disciple because of this. After all, that was Jiraiya, one of the 3 ninjas, the common teacher of the 4th generation and the 7th generation. 3rd generation. Xia Li was shocked, but he did not forget to salute the 3rd generation. Well, Xia Li, from the way you looked just now, do you know the person next to me? The 3rd generation said gently. Yes, the legendary Jiraiya, one of the 3 ninjas. I didn't expect to see him here. I heard that Jiraiya has not been active in the village for a long time. Xia Li also answered truthfully. Hahaha, it seems that my reputation in Konoha is still very big. Jiraiya couldn't help but open his mouth and laugh after hearing Xia Li's words. He didn't feel restrained at all, which made the third generation a little headache. However, Xia Li could also see that although he had a headache, the third generation was probably in the most relaxed state at this time. After all, with Jiraiya here, he could put down some of his worries. Okay, Xia Li, you should be ready, right? The third generation interrupted Jiraiya's laughter and asked. Yes, I'm ready. Xia Li said and handed the Flying Thunder God kunai to the third generation. Jiraiya next to him couldn't help but restrain his smile after seeing this kunai, and a look of reminiscence appeared on his face. He thought of the figure with golden hair and looked at Xia Li again. It must be said that in terms of appearance, they are basically on par, but Minato is indeed more sunny. While Jiraiya was reminiscing, the third generation had already taken the kunai and said with a smile. Xia Li, you have always been very mature, so you must be able to guess why Jiraiya is here, right? Well, of course, I am willing to take Jiraiya as my teacher. Xia Li's eyes lit up, and then he showed an ecstatic look and said directly. Seeing Xia Li like this, the third generation couldn't help but nodded with satisfaction. Boy, it's not that easy to become my disciple. The third generation called me back more than a dozen times because he said that you have a very high talent, so I came back to take a look. If you don't pass this test, it proves that your talent is just so, and I will naturally not accept you as my disciple. Jiraiya also came back to his senses and said seriously at this time, he actually had no intention of accepting a disciple. After all, his mind was focused on traveling and collecting materials and finding the child of destiny, but the third generation kept sending him messages, which annoyed him. He was also afraid that something would happen to Konoha, and the other party was his teacher, so he couldn't block the third generation. This annoyed Jiraiya, and he couldn't help but become curious about Xia Li, who was said by the third Hokage to be as talented as Minato. After knowing the third Hokage's test, he finally rushed back. I will pass the test. Xia Li just said so, with a strong confidence in his tone, and this confidence also made Jiraiya stunned for a moment, and then he couldn't help but grin. Then I look forward to being able to accept another disciple. Third Hokage, Jiraiya, I want to ask, what is the specific content of the assessment? Xia Li waited for a while and found that neither the third Hokage nor Jiraiya explained the content of the test to him, so he couldn't help but take the initiative to ask. Well, the content of the test is actually very simple, Xia Li, you just need to use the summoning technique given to you before to summon the Flying Thunder God kunai. The third Hokage said with a smile. Jiraiya couldn't help rolling his eyes after hearing this. Is his teacher bullying people? But he just said this requirement. The real requirement is much lower than this. However, Xia Li was stunned. What kind of request was this? To summon a kunai, was it that difficult? Xia Li did not understand, but if that was all, then the Flying Thunder God would be. The next moment, Xia Li paused, because he suddenly discovered that in his perception, he seemed to have lost the connection with the Flying Thunder God kunai that he had established for a long time. Suddenly, Xia Li's face showed a look of astonishment. The third generation nodded at this scene. It was found so quickly, it was really good, so he spoke again. As for time, it will be fine if it can be completed before tomorrow. Jiraiya, you watch from the side. As he said, the third generation picked up the file next to him and started reading. In his opinion, it would not be so easy for Xia Li to achieve this goal. I knew I would watch. Jiraiya yawned and looked at the third generation, then said to Xia Li casually, boy, if it doesn't work, give up quickly. This immortal still has to go to collect light. I haven't been back to Konoha for many years. I must see more. Xia Li did not answer. He had already calmed down and focused all his attention on perception. After a while, Xia Li still felt that trace of connection, but it was almost vague. So what did the third generation and Jiraiya do? Why could he make the kunai, which he had established a deep connection with, seem to have no connection? Although Xia Li was a little confused, this connection should not be enough to communicate with the spirit, so should he use the previously established technique? But the connection was almost cut off. Is the technique really useful? Xia Li was confused, but he no longer hesitated. Anyway, it was still early until tomorrow, so he would try it first. The next moment, Xia Li bit his finger and formed a seal of the summoning technique. Although Jiraiya seemed to be indifferent, his attention was actually on Xia Li, and Xia Li's seal-forming speed surprised him. Such a fast seal-forming speed. He must have practiced a lot, right? At this time, even if it was just this scene, Jiraiya slowly believed that what the third generation said in the letter about the other party's efforts was true. However, Jiraiya shook his head when he looked at the other party's summoning technique. This would not work. Chapter 56 Flying Thunder God, It's Mine. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. Xia Li looked at the motionless ground. If it was normal, the Flying Thunder God Kunai would have been summoned by him, but now there was no movement at all. This made Xia Li frown, but he was not panicked. He slowly closed his eyes and looked for the connection through perception. You have a good mentality, and you found the right method so quickly. It seems that this level will not be able to stop the opponent for long. He only needs to summon a few more times to pass the level. Jiraiya's eyes lit up when he saw this scene. This talent, the third generation, did not lie to him. Moreover, this mentality was not mentioned in the third generation's letter. Jiraiya thought that Xia Li would be a little panicked after the first failure, but he was not at all. How confident do you need to be in yourself? Soon, Jiraiya saw Xia Li move again, and his eyes brightened. Did he sense it so quickly? Xia Li opened his eyes, grasped the connection that he had finally sensed, and used the summoning technique again. However, it still failed. The familiar Flying Thunder God Kunai did not appear in Xia Li's sight, which made Xia Li's heart fluctuate. He couldn't help but take a deep breath, and his eyes showed determination. He would definitely learn Flying Thunder God anyway. What Xia Li didn't know was that Jiraiya and the third generation looked at the trembling Flying Thunder God Kunai, and then couldn't help but look at each other, and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. They actually successfully contacted the Flying Thunder God Kunai the second time. You know, they used a sealing technique for this. Although it was a special sealing technique, not a complete sealing, it can also explain a lot of things. Hiss. Jiraiya took a breath. From this point of view, the other party's talent in Flying Thunder God is probably not much weaker than Minato. After being surprised, the third generation couldn't help but show a satisfied smile and continue to review the scroll. Jiraiya, who saw Xia Li's reaction just now, finally fluctuated, but recovered very quickly, so fast that Jiraiya was also very satisfied. At this time, Jiraiya finally decided that he would accept this disciple. Even if it was basically impossible for him to be the child of destiny, it didn't matter. What else could he think of if he didn't accept such a talent as a disciple? Time passed slowly, and Xia Li found that trace of connection again, and this time it was a little clearer than the previous perception. Xia Li did not hesitate and used the summoning technique again, but it still failed. However, this time Xia Li did not have any fluctuations. If he failed, he would continue to perceive. At the same time, he had some guesses in his mind. If this was the case, then the other party would be able to explain it clearly after giving him a day. Sure enough, when Xia Li once again sensed his connection with the Flying Thunder God Kunai, this time the connection was clearer than the last time. So is it for this reason to leave a day? Let yourself use the summoning technique again and then deepen the connection. No, it is not to deepen the connection, but the other party used some unknown means to cover up this connection, and it is necessary to use the summoning technique again and again to break through the cover. According to Xia Li's feeling, he doesn't need a whole day, about 2 hours can be completed, so he can probably pass this test this time, right? But if that's all, Xia Li will not be satisfied. This time is also an opportunity to show his talent. If it's just a routine, it means missing such a good opportunity in vain. This is a serious waste in Xia Li's opinion. No way. So, this time Xia Li did not choose to use the summoning technique again. What Xia Li didn't know was that his talent had actually been revealed in Jiraiya's opinion, but even if he knew, he would not give up going further. After all, he has very few resources now, and the stronger the talent, the more resources he can get. And Jiraiya looked at Xia Li. According to the interval between the first and second times, the third time should have been enough to contact. Why didn't he continue to use the summoning technique? Did he think wrong? Jiraiya couldn't help but frowned. He said that he would accept the other party as a disciple only after the other party completed the test. He had already recognized Xia Li. If the other party thought wrong and didn't summon the flying thunder god Kunai in the end, would he still break his promise? At this time, Jiraiya, who was already satisfied with Xia Li's talent, could not help but worry. However, soon, Jiraiya looked at Xia Li and frowned. He always felt that Xia Li's current state was somewhat familiar, but Jiraiya did not think about the immortal arts. After all, how could people outside learn immortal arts? Even if the three holy places can learn immortal arts, learning immortal arts requires sufficient chakra to suppress and balance natural energy. This kid's chakra is definitely not enough, so Jiraiya can't think about immortal arts. This is also caused by Jiraiya's lack of proficiency in the use of immortal arts. If it were the immortal master Shenze, he would find Xia Li's state. Xia Li slowly entered the state of emptiness and darkness. In this state, his perception has undergone a qualitative change, and this time, Xia Li finally clearly felt the connection with the flying thunder god Kunai, and most importantly, that connection was no different from the connection in the perception of the empty state. This shows that the method of concealing the connection between the third generation and Jiraiya is directly ineffective in higher-level perception. Rather than having any effect, this discovery also surprised Xia Li a little, but it was a good thing. The unexpected surprise, the perception effect in the state of emptiness was even stronger than he imagined. In addition to this time, it will definitely be a great help to him in the future. Now, Xia Li slowly showed a confident smile, and this time he slowly began to seal his hands. Flying Thunder God, it's his. When Jiraiya was still thinking about how to find other reasons to accept Xia Li as a disciple after his failure, he suddenly found that Xia Li moved again, and he was relieved. Then Jiraiya also saw the difference in Xia Li this time, that is, stronger self-confidence. This discovery also made Jiraiya's heart move, and at the same time a little unbelievable. Could it be, that the next moment, Xia Li had already completed the seal? This time, in Jiraiya's eyes, the flying thunder god Kunai did not emit the vibration of being summoned, because it disappeared directly, and this means that it was successfully summoned out. How is it possible? At this moment, Xia Li was smiling, holding the familiar kunai handle, looking at the third generation and Jiraiya. That voice was so brisk and confident. Third generation, Jiraiya, I succeeded. Jiraiya opened his mouth and looked at the kunai in Xia Li's hand, his eyes full of disbelief. As for the third generation, the scroll in his hand had fallen on the table at some point, and he was a little unresponsive. He seemed to have just reviewed it for a while. It succeeded. However, the third generation looked at the familiar kunai in Xia Li's hand and slowly recovered. This time he really showed a relieved and shocked smile. Even the third generation was wondering if such a talent was wasted for Jiraiya to teach. Although he didn't have much free time, he still had some time to squeeze in, and it was not completely impossible to accept another apprentice. Judging from the opponent's talent for Flying Thunder God, Jiraiya didn't need to teach him Flying Thunder God. Besides, Jiraiya himself didn't know this technique, it was just because Minato was more familiar with this technique. Now it seems that Xia Li can definitely learn it himself. In Konoha, two ninjas with very high status were completely shocked when they faced a boy who was only 7 years old. Chapter 57, Become a Disciple. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. The third generation and Jiraiya actually tried this test. It was because they tried that they knew they didn't have the talent to learn Flying Thunder God, and they also knew how difficult it was. Of course, with their ninjutsu abilities, it's not impossible to learn it, but they can probably only learn the Flying Thunder God's formation. However, they thought about the Flying Thunder God's formation. To be honest, it was embarrassing for Flying Thunder God, so it's better not to learn it. It's useless, although this talent is only applicable to Flying Thunder God, but it's still the same thing. It's Flying Thunder God. A strategic level ninjutsu verified by the fourth generation. Ahem, Jiraiya, if you still need to continue to respond to the prophecy and look for the child of prophecy, then you might as well let me do it. The third generation said without changing his face. Suddenly, Jiraiya was stunned, and then he looked at his teacher carefully, but found that the other party didn't even have the intention of blushing, and couldn't help saying, "Teacher, where is your face? Are you competing with your own apprentice for the apprentice?" In an instant, the third generation's face turned dark, and his hands began to form seals. "Hey, old man!" Jiraiya's face changed, and then he was hit by the third generation without any defense. Xia Li looked at this scene and sighed secretly. He was indeed worthy of being the third generation Hokage and one of the three ninjas. If it were him, he would definitely not be able to resist the playful fight just now. However, it was the first time to see such a third generation. Although Xia Li did not see the third generation often, he could definitely guess that the third generation would never be like this at ordinary times. It was only in front of Jiraiya that he showed such an attitude and performance. So, Xia Li also sighed a little. The third generation is old. Only when you are old will you look so sad, especially cherish your feathers, often fall into a state of reminiscence, and can't control your emotions. But, then again, even if you are old, you are still so safe. If there is no Jiraiya, it is estimated that Flying Thunder God will not be handed over to him. To be honest, Xia Li has always known that the third generation is old, and even calculated these. He thought that with his performance, he would be able to get Flying Thunder God from the old third generation. Maybe a little short, but time can make up for this gap. However, reality made Xia Li understand that the third generation is still the third generation, just old, and some basic calculations are still there. Xia Li did not calculate Jiraiya, although he also knew that it was possible, but the uncertainty was too great, so he even put his target on Haruno Sakura of Team 7, not Jiraiya. However, Xia Li smiled. Although he calculated nothing, the result was good. The farce between the third generation and Jiraiya soon ended, and the third generation finally gave up. Xia Li was also relieved. He had no right to choose here, only the right to be chosen. Although he wanted to worship Jiraiya as his teacher, if the third generation really chose him in the end, could he refuse? No. However, both the third generation and Jiraiya are of great benefit to Xia Li now. He, kid, from now on, you are my disciple. Jiraiya said and laughed. Yes, I've met you, teacher. Xia Li's tone was also excited. This time he didn't need to pretend, he was really excited. Xia Li actually didn't mind giving Jiraiya a traditional apprenticeship process in his memory, but the Hokage didn't seem to have so many processes, so he didn't bother too much, just remember it in his heart. Well, since it's confirmed, let's leave quickly. The third generation said casually. Seeing this, Jiraiya casually greeted the third generation and was about to take Xia Li away, but Xia Li certainly couldn't be as casual as Jiraiya, and after receiving the third generation's signal, he followed Jiraiya and left. After they left, the third generation restrained his smile, knocked on the table with his pipe, and then a masked figure appeared in front of him. Go to Danzo and tell him again to be honest recently. The third generation Hokage seemed to be shrouded in a shadow under his hat, and the voice came through the hat. Yes. The captain of the Umbu did not ask anything, but responded directly, and left the Hokage's office the next moment. The third generation looked into the distance, somewhat relieved. Jiraiya's strength was stronger than he had imagined, so he was more relieved. Although there was the prophecy of the great Toad Sage, the third generation still hoped that Xia Li could keep Jiraiya in Konoha, but the third generation also knew that there was little hope. His apprentice was quite stubborn. If he had not sent more than a dozen letters in a row this time, Jiraiya might not come back. Although the third generation now felt that it was okay for Jiraiya not to come back, he might have another genius disciple. Soon, Danzo looked at the captain of the Umbu in front of him, and his face was very ugly, because there were many roots lying on the ground around him, and it seemed that they were forcibly pulled out by the captain of the Umbu and thrown in front of Danzo. What does Hiruzen mean? I have already given in enough. Danzo said coldly. Hokage-sama said that you should be honest recently. The captain of the Umbu conveyed the words of the third generation truthfully. You've said this before, and I've also asked the root to retreat. Danzo shouted angrily. Then let all the roots shrink back, and I only know that Master Jiraiya is back. The Umbu captain didn't say much, and he left after hearing what the third Hokage said. Danzo looked at the root members who had all been thrown out with a cold face, gritted his teeth, and finally ordered, "Don't look after the Kyuubi kid recently." Danzo naturally knew what the third generation was worried about. Wasn't he afraid that Jiraiya would find out about Naruto's treatment and then have a grudge in his heart? The roots lying on the ground were relieved. If Danzo asked them to continue at this time, the consequences would be unimaginable for them, not to mention the third generation. Even if Jiraiya found out about monitoring the monster, it would be difficult for them to survive. Danzo was thinking about why Jiraiya came back at this time. It should be Hiruzen who called him back, but what happened in Konoha that needed Jiraiya to come back at this time? Uchiha clan extermination? No, this matter has passed. If he wanted to call him back, he should have called him back earlier. At this time, a message came back, which was sent back by the root members who were monitoring the door of the Hokage from a distance. The moment he saw Xia Li's name, Danzo instantly understood why. This was to notify Jiraiya to come back and accept a disciple. Hiruzen. Danzo gritted his teeth. How was he worse than Jiraiya? Why did he go to great lengths to call Jiraiya back and was unwilling to hand Xia Li over to him? However, at least it was not the worst news. The other party was not coming back to inherit the position of Hokage, so Danzo finally breathed a sigh of relief after knowing it. It was okay as long as Jiraiya was not coming back to succeed the position of Hokage. As for Hiruzen, he felt that he could still wait because he had Hashirama's cells, but Jiraiya could not. As for Xia Li, he was still too young and was far from posing any threat. However, that deep dissatisfaction was still imprinted in Danzo's heart. P.S. Let's talk about becoming Jiraiya's apprentice. Do you feel that after talking so much about Sakura, there is no Sakura? The reason is actually very simple. People's goals will only be determined by things that can be determined. Jiraiya's uncertainty is too great. Even if he works hard, he still needs to rely on luck, so it is impossible to be a goal. Therefore, in this state, Sakura is the only goal that can be determined. Chapter 58 Display. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. The back mountain of Konoha, where Xia Li usually doesn't come, is very empty. At this time, Xia Li and Jiraiya, two figures, one small and one big, are looking at each other. Xia Li, use all your skills on me. Jiraiya became more intimate with Xia Li after accepting him as his disciple, and the reason why he brought Xia Li here at this time was naturally to test Xia Li's foundation. Okay, then teacher, be careful. Xia Li nodded. He was still assured of Jiraiya's strength, but he still reminded him. Don't worry about me, come on, I am an immortal. Jiraiya said confidently. Then, Xia Li no longer hesitated and launched an attack directly from the front. He just wanted to show his foundation, so there was no need to do some fancy things. He used physical skills to fight Jiraiya head-on. Of course, the so-called confrontation was just Jiraiya defending and Xia Li attacking. Soon, Xia Li found that his attack had no effect at all. Jiraiya saw through it all and easily resisted it. However, he was not discouraged. After all, the opponent was Jiraiya. If it really worked, he would have to doubt whether it was the right thing for him to become his disciple. Little did he know that Jiraiya was a little surprised on the other side of Xia Li. This physical skill and physical fitness were not bad. There should be someone teaching him. It can't be completely wild. Jiraiya made a judgment, but who was teaching Xia Li? There was basically no teacher with such ability in the school. Let's ask after the test is over. After Xia Li finished the basic physical skill display, arcs emerged on his body, his strength was improved, and his speed was the biggest improvement. However, even so, facing Jiraiya, Xia Li's attack still seemed so weak. Even a fist with lightning could not break Jiraiya's palm, let alone make the opponent retreat. Although the opponent was one of the legendary three ninjas, Xia Li still had a feeling of eagerness in his heart at this time. He wanted to give it a try. The next moment, Xia Li focused all his attention on his legs, and the lightning release enhancement reached the limit that Xia Li could reach at this moment. however, this was still not the end. Xia Li continued to make seals, wind release, fierce wind palm. The next moment, the violent and strong wind rose from Xia Li's body and finally condensed around Xia Li's body, with his legs being the most concentrated place. "Teacher, please be careful," Xia Li still said, and after a word, Xia Li's figure disappeared directly. Although this is the same trick as before, it is no longer the same. First of all, Xia Li's basic quality has improved, and secondly, the depth of lightning release enhancement has made this attack far exceed any previous attack. Jiraiya didn't know how to express his surprise at this time. He could still see the increase in speed of the lightning release, and he had definitely mastered the nature of acceleration. And that should be the wind release fierce wind palm. Has it been mastered to this extent? Moreover, this speed can be further broken through. Even if it is a Chunin, it can't reach this speed if it is not a speed type, right? No, Jiraiya soon discovered that even the speed type would find it difficult to achieve. At such a speed, even an ordinary punch would be powerful, not to mention that it was clear that Xia Li's attack method must be the legs that had been condensed with the thunder release enhancement and the wind release fierce wind palm. Ninjutsu needle Jizo. Finally, Jiraiya began to make hand seals for the first time. Even he could not take on such an attack with just his body. As Jiraiya finished making hand seals, his messy white hair grew rapidly and wrapped his whole body in the first place. The next moment, Xia Li appeared in front of Jiraiya and kicked Jiraiya's white hair hard. Bang! The violent impact force directly cracked the ground under Jiraiya's feet, and also made Jiraiya step back a few steps, and the place where he stood finally formed a depression. The power of this blow was already terrifying for the physical strength of a 7-year-old child. Xia Li's eyes lit up when he saw Jiraiya use the ninjutsu. Although he still didn't hurt Jiraiya, he finally made him use the ninjutsu, and it's not over yet. The display of physical skills has been completed, so it's time to display the ninjutsu. He can show very little, just a sea-level wind escape, but that is the ninjutsu that best fits the nature of cutting. Wind escape wind cutting technique. That's right, it is a relatively simple ninjutsu among the sea-level wind escape, but Xia Li found that it is the most suitable ninjutsu for cutting. The nature of wind escape itself requires extreme speed and pressure, and the wind cutting technique just takes advantage of these 2 points, and what Xia Li has to do is to increase the nature of wind in the wind escape wind cutting technique to the maximum, which is enough to make its power have a qualitative leap. Maybe it is not as powerful as Xia Li's kick just now, but it is not comparable to the kick just now in terms of single-point breakthrough. The invisible wind blade formed by the wind cutting technique cuts towards Jiraiya's white long hair like needles. In the end, the wind cutting technique really didn't hurt Jiraiya, but Jiraiya looked at the part of his hair that was cut off, and then looked at Xia Li who had stopped attacking, and knew that Xia Li's ability display had ended. At this time, Jiraiya had time to think carefully about what he had seen. A 7-year-old child, with good physical skills and physical fitness, and a very good foundation in ninjutsu, fast seal formation speed and even able to do a simplified number of seals, and finally obviously mastered the good form and nature changes, plus the perception talent and flying thunder god talent that had been shown before. What is this? Jiraiya was a little confused for a while. Did Xia Li really have no one to teach him before? Although it is not good to think so for the teacher, Jiraiya is very clear about the character of the 3rd generation. If someone really taught Xia Li, it would definitely not be hidden from the 3rd generation. Xia Li's identity would have been thoroughly investigated long ago if he was assigned to him, so, that is to say, Xia Li figured it out by himself. Jiraiya couldn't help but smack his lips at this time. What a talented disciple he had received. At this time, Jiraiya was somewhat relieved. Fortunately, he was back. Otherwise, if he hadn't come back, this disciple might have become a junior brother. Teacher, I have finished the demonstration. At this time, Xia Li also came to Jiraiya and said, as for the Rasengan that he had learned before, it was of course impossible to show it to Jiraiya. After all, it was a ninjutsu that the 4th generation created for 3 years. And with Kushina, the 4th generation could observe the form of the tailed beast Jade at any time. Even so, it took 3 years to create it. It is conceivable that although this technique is not difficult to learn after knowing the principle, it is very difficult to create it. Therefore, Xia Li, who had never seen the tailed beast jade, basically had no conditions to create the Rasengan. Using it would be asking for trouble. Good. Jiraiya slowly came back to his senses from the shock at this time. After saying several good words in a row, he took back the needle Jizo and looked at Xia Li with a little burning eyes. Not only is Flying Thunder God talented, Xia Li's talents in other aspects are far beyond his expectations. P.S. The update time has changed once since it was released today. It will be updated at 9:30 in the morning in the future. Chapter 59 The Problem of Flying Thunder God. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. Xia Li, you didn't have a teacher before, right? Jiraiya thought for a while and asked the question he wanted to know most. Xia Li's ability made him feel unreasonable. Of course there are, but if you don't count the teachers in the ninja school, there are none. Xia Li also understood what Jiraiya meant and didn't pretend to be stupid on purpose. Although the teachers in the ninja school are all suitable for teaching, to be honest, it is basically impossible to teach students like Xia Li. Jiraiya thought about it and continued to ask, then those offensive methods you just used were all taught by teachers in the ninja school. Although he knew it was impossible, if Xia Li answered yes, then Jiraiya really wanted to meet the teacher at the ninja school, and he kept it secret. As for physical skills, Master Metkai will occasionally give me some pointers when he has time, and I learn the rest by myself. Xia Li answered truthfully, and at the same time briefly explained what happened when he met Metkai. Hiss. Even though he had already guessed it, Jiraiya couldn't help but gasp after getting the accurate answer, but, Metkai? It should be the descendant of the 10,000 Yugenin. He has also heard about the other party's deeds. It is indeed a pity. If his descendant is giving advice on taijutsu, the taijutsu aspect can be explained. However, what about ninjutsu? What about morphological changes? What about property changes? Jiraiya couldn't help but fell into deep thought again. He had taught several disciples, and their talents were also very high, but he had never met a student who basically learned a lot of things without being taught. Teacher? Xia Li couldn't help but ask when he saw that Jiraiya didn't reply for a long time. Xia Li is very, very good. Jiraiya came back to his senses this time and did not hide his thoughts and praised him. Yes, but you still need to work hard. Xia Li did not deny his excellence, but just being talented was not enough. He also had to become stronger quickly. Yes, you have to keep working hard. There are many geniuses who die halfway. Jiraiya laughed and said. Originally, he wanted to use this to persuade Xia Li not to be proud, but he did not expect that Xia Li would say so. This didn't require his persuasion at all, and looking at this answer, it not only expressed his confidence, but also showed that he would continue to work hard, which was better than what Jiraiya wanted to persuasion. So, what else can he, the teacher, teach? At this time, Jiraiya also had a headache. It was not difficult to teach a genius, but it was indeed a bit difficult to teach someone like Xia Li. Sure enough, ninjutsu should be the main focus. Jiraiya sighed. Originally, he didn't want to teach these on the first day. He just wanted to teach some life experiences and get closer to each other. But it turned out that the other party was probably really not good at this aspect. What do you need him to teach? So Jiraiya didn't think much about anything else and said, through the test just now, I already know roughly your current level. To be honest, you are very good. Among your peers, I have seen only a few. There are several who can compare with you, but they all have family teachings, so you are undoubtedly the best among them. Although Jiraiya often missed his apprentice Minato, he also knew that although Minato was very good without his guidance, he was indeed not as good as Xia Li. Jiraiya also looked at Xia Li as he spoke. His face didn't change much and he couldn't help but nod secretly. It seemed that Xia Li's words were not just words, he really thought so, so Jiraiya continued. Originally, I thought that today was just a simple test, but now it seems that we still need to teach some real talents. Xia Li, do you know what talent is needed to learn Flying Thunder God, the 4th generation ninjutsu you just obtained? Jiraiya threw the question to Xia Li. Xia Li did not hesitate. He had guessed it when he obtained the Flying Thunder God kunai, so he directly said, space talent and perception talent. Jiraiya nodded, also nodded in agreement, then shook his head and said, that's right, but it's not complete. In addition, you need to master the sealing technique. Sealing technique? The kunai channeling out of the state is to test my perception talent, and the sealing technique. Xia Li thought, since Jiraiya said it, there was no way there would be no test, but he just ignored it. When Jiraiya saw Xia Li thinking, he was not in a hurry to give an answer, and was waiting there with a smile. Sword of Endurance of Love. Xia Li guessed as she recalled her previous control of kunai, her eyes lit up. Yes, it is the Sword of Ninja Love. This is the surface of Minato's 4th generation sealing technique. And if you can input chakra into it and complete the control of kunai, it already shows that you have with the talent of sealing. Jiraiya nodded with satisfaction. It was really easy to teach a smart student. Xia Li nodded. I see. It turned out that the first step was also a test for him, but he felt it was too easy, so he didn't regard it as a test. I can't basically teach you anything about Flying Thunder Gods in terms of space, but I can still teach you a lot about sealing techniques. Jiraiya was a little more modest, although he said that his sealing techniques were inferior to those of some people. It is indeed not as good, but it is by no means an ordinary person. Suddenly, Xia Li's eyes lit up and she nodded quickly, while her thoughts began to wander. In other words, the Sword of Enduring Love is actually just a simplified final form. No, it doesn't actually need to be the word Sword of Enduring Love, and it can continue to be simplified. Xia Li guessed. Yes, but it is already very difficult to simplify to this point, and it is possible to condense the mark of the Flying Thunder God in an instant. However, if you continue to streamline, the energy invested and the harvest will be seriously out of proportion, so Minato did not continue to streamline. Go down. Jiraiya looked at Xia Li in surprise, nodded and did not agree to continue streamlining. Jiraiya's words did not dampen Xia Li's enthusiasm. He felt that Jiraiya was right, but he thought of other points at this time and continued to ask, then, if the current Flying Thunder God mark is after the streamlined version of Senior Brother, mark, then when I study, I can increase it in turn, and then increase it to the point where I can learn it, and then follow the streamlined path of my Senior Brother to learn. The more Xia Li talked about it, the more he felt that this idea was very feasible. Jiraiya couldn't help but look at Xia Li after listening to it. He felt that this statement was very reasonable, and it would definitely make Xia Li better at Flying Thunder Gods. Get started quickly. At this time, Jiraiya may have understood that why Xia Li was able to reach his current level at this age is probably inseparable from his mind. It is estimated that the same is true at other times when studying, and he can achieve twice the result with half the effort. I think this idea is okay, but it needs to be verified later. I will give you Minato's experience later, which should be able to help you. Jiraiya said. Thank you, teacher. Xia Li was very satisfied and sighed at the same time. This is the benefit of having a teacher. In this case, as long as he learns the sealing technique and the Flying Thunder God's technique, he can initially try the Flying Thunder God. However, without the streamlined Flying Thunder God mark, it is estimated that it can only be used as a fixed-point teleportation, but it is also very good. Chapter 60 Chakra Amount. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. Just when Xia Li was happy, Jiraiya reminded him again. You have all the above talents. With your talent, it is not difficult to learn Flying Thunder God. However, you should also note that even if you learn Flying Thunder God, it is not a complete ability. You still need to possess it to use Flying Thunder God. Sufficient responsiveness. Although Jiraiya also felt that he reminded him a little too early, who knew how long the little guy in front of him would learn it with his talent, so it was still necessary to remind him. I understand. Xia Li knows this well. After all, Flying Thunder God means that the whole person teleports over. Not only does the other party fail to react, but the user himself also needs to react enough. Otherwise, after teleporting over, but if he didn't react, wouldn't it be equivalent to sending it to the other party? By the way, Xia Li, do you have any questions you want to ask the teacher about during your training? Jiraiya felt that he didn't teach anything. Although he talked about some flying thunder gods, this ninjutsu actually still needs to be taught by Xia Li. I learned it myself and couldn't help but keep asking. Xia Li paused for a moment, and then after thinking about it, his face became serious. He indeed had one of the biggest problems that had been bothering him. Teacher, I would like to ask about my chakra amount. I have always felt that my chakra is too little. Xia Li has been using her chakra carefully since a year ago, but she still often feels like there simply isn't enough. The amount of chakra. Jiraiya looked at Xia Li, and after sizing it up, he said, judging from your performance just now, your chakra amount is not low. It should have reached the level of a genin now. But it's still not enough. My daily practice cannot be fully developed due to the amount of chakra. Xia Li said with a wry smile. Jiraiya nodded. Although in his eyes Xia Li's chakra amount was not much, but thinking about Xia Li's level, it was true that Xia Li's current chakra amount was somewhat insufficient, but he didn't have much of it. There is a way. Xia Li, you should also know that the human body has different chakra growth trends at different ages, right? Jiraiya said. I know a little bit. Xia Li nodded. He knew this, but he still wanted to ask. If there was a solution, it would be a big profit. Well, let me explain it in detail. You should understand it after I say it. Jiraiya finally found a place where Xia Li didn't know how to do it. He immediately became energetic, sat cross-legged on the ground and started sketching on the ground. And Xia Li sat next to him like Jiraiya, listening carefully. First of all, a person actually has physical energy and mental energy from the time he is born. Theoretically, if the baby has the consciousness to learn, then he can refine chakra, but we do not recommend that the baby grow up in the body. Chakra extraction begins at the next stage, and most people reach this stage at the age of 6. Although there are some beings who can grow to this stage in advance, it won't be too different. Before the age of 6, almost all the body's energy is used for growth. If you forcibly refine chakra, you will inevitably use it. The energy used to develop the body will be snatched away, and the impact on the body's development will have an inevitable impact on the amount of chakra. Xia Li nodded. In fact, he reached the stage that Jiraiya mentioned before he was 6 years old. However, he did not have a method to extract chakra at that time, so he did not extract it until he got the method after going to school. In fact, in the previous period, a lot was extracted before the age of 6, but there was nothing that could be done about it. After all, it was a war period and required special treatment. Now Xia Li lives in a peaceful period. Jiraiya saw Xia Li listening seriously, smiled, and continued. After the age of 6, the total amount of human body energy will increase. However, the energy used to develop the body still accounts for the majority, leaving only a small amount of free energy that can be used to refine chakra. And Xia Li, you are at this stage now. Xia Li now has this amount of chakra and should be practicing regularly, right? Jiraiya asked. Yes, but the effect is not very good in terms of increasing the amount of chakra. Xia Li nodded. If it weren't for the thunder massage, it might take 1 or 2 semesters for his chakra to reach the genin level. That's right. Jiraiya nodded and said, although you exercise a lot, it actually mainly increases your physical fitness, and only a small part of the increase in chakra amount. It can be said that you are now being able to reach the genin level through this small section also shows that your chakra level is not low. Xia Li frowned, and then told Jiraiya about his thunder escape massage. It was not something that needed to be kept secret. Jiraiya was also stunned after hearing this. Did he actually master this? But yes, Jiraiya thought about Xia Li's form change, and it's not surprising that he can do it. This method is only suitable for real geniuses. According to his understanding, geniuses still have thunder attributes, so Xia Li and Kakashi are the only ones who can do it. There is a way to use it at this age, not many people know this method, and Konoha doesn't teach it. The reason is very simple. They are afraid that students who don't know their own abilities will forcefully learn form changes. If they don't learn it, it's not a bad thing. If they learn it, if they don't pay attention, they will hurt themselves. What should I do if the electricity is cooked? Even so, your chakra volume will not be low. After entering the next stage, your chakra volume will reach a high-speed burst period. Jiraiya thought for a while and said. This stage is usually around the age of 12, right? Xia Li couldn't help but sigh and asked. Sure enough, he still had to wait until he was 12. Jiraiya looked at Xia Li and nodded. It was not surprising that he could guess it. After all, this is the age when students theoretically graduate from school. Jiraiya looked at the disappointed Xia Li and said solemnly, Xia Li, I would like to remind you that even if you feel that your chakra is not enough, you must not extract more chakra than the limit, as this will have a great impact on your body. I understand, teacher, that's why I haven't extracted it. Xia Li said. Yeah. Jiraiya also knew that Xia Li was very mature, but he still felt uneasy and had to remind him. Just when Xia Li was disappointed, Jiraiya suddenly showed a smile and said, Xia Li, although my master doesn't have a way to increase your current chakra amount, there is a method that allows you to have more chakra during the high-speed burst period. The method of measuring chakra. After Xia Li heard this sentence, her disappointment suddenly disappeared, and she became curious about the method Jiraiya said. Sensing Xia Li's curiosity, Jiraiya finally felt a little like a teacher. He laughed and said proudly, Xia Li, have you heard of the secret medicine?